Thank you for joining us post-lunch for a discussion around the future of technology in sports. So, just as an opening piece, sport isn't just shaped by those on the field. We've heard it spoken about already today. It's driven by the passion of its fans. We've seen time and time again that fans are often tomorrow's athletes, the innovators, the game changers. So it's getting to them when they're young to make a difference. We're also living in very exciting times when it comes to technology, where advancements in things like AI, wearables, biomechanics and data analytics are changing and reshaping how athletes train, they compete and they engage with fans, but also how those same fans connect with the sports that they enjoy and follow. So, with this in mind, joined by this really esteemed panel, hopefully going to help me discuss it. And I think we'll start by asking each one of them to give you 60 seconds. It's a bit like speed dating. 60 seconds to tell you who they are and what they do. So, Heba.
Good afternoon, everyone. Probably I'm trying not to get you to sleep after this delicious meal in here. It's my first time in Saudi, and it's been absolutely lovely to be with you all. And thanks very much for WiMENA for organizing it. So I'm Heba Bevan. I'm the CEO and founder for UtterBerry. I'm an engineer, so I'm not a sport lady, but I am an engineer. I understand AI very well because that's my day-to-day work. What we do very small sensor with artificial intelligence and machine learning, and we design them for multiple industries. We started in Crossrail, which is in tunnels, or bridges. So if you've been in London around Tower Bridge, Vauxhall Bridge, Blackfriars, we probably have monitored you there. And we make sure infrastructure doesn't collapse. The most fascinating things, we've been working with the FIA recently on our project for having sensors with huge telemetries that provide as well a cutting-edge AI on F1, on a safety car and the medical car. And we've been working as well very closely with GT3. And I'm excited to speak with you all. Thank you.
Hey everyone, thank you for having me today. My name's Jasmine Skee. This is actually my sixth trip here, and I just absolutely love coming here. I have over 25 years experience in sport, music, tech, and probably more recently esports and gaming. So the first 10 years of my career in teams, governing bodies and stadia before going into the music industry, where I worked with for O2 in the UK. So I think most people might be familiar with the venue, the O2, so launching that. And working with the likes of Coldplay, Foo Fighters, before launching the 5G network with 3. And I think 5G was going to be the new technology that would definitely help us really evolve, especially we'll probably touch today, AR and VR. And then probably my most recent role, and the reason why I've been coming to Saudi so often, was I was CEO of Guild Esports, so we're part of the Esports World Cup.
Hi, everybody. I'm Dina Hassan. I'm the Director of Corporate Development and Strategy at SURJ Sports Investments, which is essentially the sports investment arm of the Public Investment Fund. We look after investing in both leagues, federations, all kind of sports IP, and where I'm responsible for anything within the sports ecosystem that helps activate or enable that IP. So sports technology, commercial agencies, event operators, content services. You'll have heard our lovely news yesterday about our deal with DAZN. And previously, I was the global head of marketing at Sony Sports out of London, the UK, where I managed all marketing communications and brand for Hawkeye Innovations, Pulse Live, and Beyond Sports. Prior to that, a background in sports marketing, tech, and broadcasting, to keep it short.
Hi, everyone. Donal McElwee, managing partner at Portas Consulting. We're an advisory provider in the sports sector and have been working here in Riyadh since 2015. In that time, we've probably worked on about 200 plus sports projects with the various entities from the ministries to the private sector, and I would say the impact and the transformation that we've seen over that 10-year period has been nothing short of extraordinary. And just specifically on the topic of female sports, it's been something that we're very proud to have been working on, seeing the change in female participation. When we measured female participation in 2015, it was 7% of the population, female population, that were exercising. That's now, I don't have the exact figures, but it's around the 40% mark, which is a significant change. And we also were fortunate enough to work with Princess Rima, who gave the address this morning on some of those big changes around female sports, like getting female PE into the schools curriculum, getting female gyms licensed. So it's been a fantastic journey, and looking forward to speaking with everyone.
So let's kick things straight off. Let's start with the hot topic of AI. It's often used as an umbrella term for sports technology solutions, but not all innovations are truly AI. That's one of the things I find really frustrating about the industry, is that most people will throw AI out there as a solution without properly defining it. So perhaps what I want to pass out to the panel first is any examples that you might have of a true AI-driven application in sport that you've either worked on or you've observed as being a genuine disruptor in the sports sector. So for the first question, we'll start with Heba, then we'll mix it up as we go along then, right?
Probably I will start with the sport. Back in 2016, we worked with the cricket and the rugby, and then with Ascot, so when I met George, actually. So we had in a cricket where we had our sensors embedded within the ball, telling how the spinning of the ball, if it's a vertical or horizontal, the speed of the ball, how its impact, that is when it's hit basically the inning or the cricket, and how that impact it could change the behavior in terms of training. And what can we tell regarding the athlete during their training, and how can they modify their training to adapt to different things. So we worked with Peter SURJ, which is England cricket coach at that time, and he is now one of the, I think he's near retirement, he's an umpire. Then we moved into as well for rugby, where we worked with Welsh rugby, the Dragon. And on that, we helped in monitoring as well the athlete. And then COVID hit, where we were part of the 5G in Wales. So we had our technology basically going into farming to enable certain connectivity. But in Ascot, we had to analyze the number of people coming in and out. In a venue is over 70,000 people. So like one of the lady talked about the King's Day, which is one of the basically biggest event in horse racing. The same things in Ascot is like there is from a Tuesday to the Saturday is full of people, it goes in, and there is balconies. And during that balcony, we have to analyze how many people are in that balcony. Is it safe? If it's not safe, how can we actually get them out if there is something going on? So we embedded very, very small chip in people's actually in the badges, which is, if you see in the badges, is actually is a piece of cardboard. Then after that, we monitored infrastructure, which is we don't just monitor, we have to predict. So we have to make decisions. When do they need to shut it down? When that is need to be opened up? And in recently, we are working in Australia on the northeast tunnel, which is very complicated as a massive, another massive project infrastructure. But what's fascinates me, especially in sport and working with the F1, not many females, and I really would like to see females drivers there. I would like to see more females engineers there. I think there isn't many of us, and I think would be really good to have more community there. And it's really great to see two ladies who are working there in FIA, in motorsport, sitting there in the first row. So thanks.
What we actually did at Guild was in sim racing. So I think one of the things that we wanted to do as an organization is very much focus on sim, because I think if you look at esports, it's probably that one esport that does transcend into real world racing. So we're starting to see a lot of sim races. I think there was Sebastian Job this week, after 11 years of sim, actually hopped into a Red Bull car, which is just phenomenal. So we actually looked at, the other thing when I came into esports was there was so much subjective decision making being made, which is insane when you think that it's an online sport that has so much data. So we did look at first person shooter games, so Fortnite would be an example of that, but when it came to getting data from publishers, what we found with sim racing is if you're driving Silverstone or Jeddah, no matter what game you're on, it's the exact same course. So we're able to get data from one of the games off AWS, which meant that we could put AI against that data. And I think with sim, you're generating 170 data points in 1 second. And then we built software so that we could have sim racers getting feedback on their performance in real time. And I think that's just so critical when you look at what sim can be doing for motorsport, especially with the fact that it takes away that barrier to entry. You don't have to be affluent. It's much more safer. So we were very much invested in creating this AI tool that would allow, I think there's 1.4 million sim racers in Europe to be able to perform and get their feedback in terms of their performance and do that in their own homes rather than having to go somewhere to train.
So to your point, defining AI, I think it's a very loose term, and from our perspective at SURJ, the AI and the algorithms that are used are only as good as the data. So I'm actually going to use a data example. So one of the best examples was the World Cup. And during the World Cup, there's obviously a mass of technology that's going on in the background to help with officiating and to help with fan engagement as well, and the broadcasts and all of the fantastic statistics you see on screen. And the behind the scenes there's a lot of data that's being captured, aggregated, and pushed out in sub-millisecond. And it's really, really impressive. But from the AI perspective, using that data to help with performance on the field, injury prevention, and fan engagement statistics on broadcast are probably the benchmark or baseline of where the AI industry in sports is at this current time. And moving forward from that, it's how can we increase the efficiency of the collection of that data and the format of that data and the types of data that can help fuel all of these AI algorithms to produce more use cases that will further the future of all of those elements. So World Cup and all the fantastic people who are the suppliers there is what I'll say.
And I guess there's, for you though, Donal, specifically, it's the companies that can help shape what the brands are looking for, whether it's venues, sports brands, or stadiums.
Yes, I mean, just to pick up on what Dina said, I think the starting point to have success with AI and tech is to have the right data. If you don't start with good quality data, and AI specifically is all about pattern recognition, and therefore if you don't have good data architecture, good data management, the right to use that data, the ability to organize it, then it's a big stretch to be successful with AI. And the reality is a lot of sports companies and sports entities are still struggling with data. That said, if we just step back on what is the AI industry currently doing in sport, well, the figures suggest it's about a $10 billion market globally at the moment, but and that was 2023 figures. By 2028, so 5 years on, it will have grown to 30 billion. So it is going to be adopted and adopted pretty quickly by a lot of sports entities, but there are watch-outs, and I think the data architecture is one. I think secondly is having a proper digital strategy. Again, if you don't have a digital strategy, it's difficult to get real value out of AI applications in anything more than a tactical sense. And And thirdly, it's the people that you hire within your sports organizations. Again, if they're not the right people who understand and can work with that type of technology, then inevitably the decisions won't be made. And that would be maybe my fourth point, is the governance around data and AI within a sports organization. Unless it's tight and it's actually used in decision making, you're going to get failures then of usage. So I think it's an overall positive opportunities for AI in sports and improving the experience, but one that will require quite a bit of work by the organizations to get it right.
Just sticking with the athletes for the moment. So, do any of you have like any key examples or reference points around how AI is improving the actual athlete experience? Because it also seems to be playing a more significant role in things like rules and regulations. If you look at VAR, whether you like it or not in football, it's actually moved things along. And also in coaching. So I don't know if somebody wants to jump in with a...
I can take that one, given you referenced VAR and I worked at the company that invented it. So I think there's two sides to how it impacts the athletes on the field. There's the officiating side, and then there's the health and performance side. And it's less about the AI itself and more of the, as you said, the outcomes that you're looking to achieve. So injury prevention is a massive thing when it comes to athletes, and using data from practices and friendlies and in-game and across the season and preseason, and if you've got transfers in, making sure that, to Donal's point, the data infrastructure is in line with across multiple parties, such that you're not receiving a set of data on an athlete that you can't use because there's no governance across the board when it comes to data. So I leave that to the governing bodies and the regulators to sort that out. But for the athletes in particular, it's life-changing, right? And sometimes, for good or for bad, an athlete can be evaluated based on their performance from the data. And if the data skews, you're more likely to get injured in the next 3 matches. It could affect your playing time. It could affect the value of your contract, etc. So there's that. And then on the officiating side of things, we always say there's a human managing, or in my former role, I used to say there's a human managing the tech. At the end of the day, we're not at fully automated offside yet. There are tests happening, but semi-automated offside, and making sure that we're actually reducing the amount of time that's wasted during gameplay in order to build efficiencies and make sure we're focusing on the actual gameplay alongside the health of the athletes. So at SURJ, we don't necessarily look at the performance element of things, but obviously everything that cumulatively comes out of the data and the algorithms can be multi-purpose, multi-structural. So it's important that on the field, the data is considered as well as off the field for the athletes.
I think your point about time wasting, I'm a fan of VAR, okay? But it takes a long time still, in certain cases, to make a decision.
I don't work there anymore, George.
I was looking for somebody to blame.
We can talk about it offline later, but I have my replacement you can talk to at another point in time.
I was just going to pick up on what Dina said around the use of the use by sports, let's say sports clubs, for example, of AI and technology around the performance side. But equally, to be successful as a club, it needs to be integrated across the whole business. And on some of the recent work that we've done with sports organizations, yes, there's been a focus on the on-field part, the talent, the injury prevention, the scouting, and so on, that can really be enhanced by AI. But equally, there's been wins around the front office side of that business, so everything involving fan engagement, really understanding the fan, and monetizing that, improving their experience, and all those touch points around things like sponsorship and so on. That's where you get some of the biggest gains. And then also, increasingly, particularly with sports clubs where costs are an issue, when you look at the real back office functions, and this is everything from your procurement, your operations, your finances, which are quite a cost drain for small businesses. Again, when you can use AI and tech there, it can result in significant savings and optimization. So I think the clever sports institutions are now seeing that, yes, a lot of the publicity is around the on-field part, but actually the integrating it across your whole organization is where the big opportunity is. And particularly, I think, for the sports entities here in Saudi Arabia, many of whom are, in a position with the ambition and the funding to leapfrog institutions globally where it has been more piecemeal investment. And I think it probably why I think it's quite exciting what entities like SURJ are doing to try to, to take a view on aggregating some of the opportunities in this space and then disseminating it out into the landscape, because I think the risk is a lot of entities globally in sport have picked up piecemeal applications and platforms without integrating it into a broader strategy, whereas I think here in Saudi with a more organized approach, there's a real opportunity to leapfrog.
Yeah, I think there's also data, and it's probably a question for Jasmine and for Heba. So there's two areas there. One is the way that technology can interact with the fans that aren't in the stadium. In all of my time in working in this industry, I feel like, particularly from the sponsorship perspective, there's a massively missed opportunity to talk to the majority of your fans, because the majority of your fans aren't in your venues, they're at home. Okay, and so that's one area that we can probably touch on. Maybe for you, Jasmine. And the other area is when we talk about data analytics and how it helps improve the athlete, we have to think about who's designing that technology. Because predominantly at the moment, it's still men that work in that industry. So if we touch on the first point with you, Jasmine.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it's something that I try and tell a lot of people when it comes to sponsorship activation. And if you're thinking about what rights you have, is to think about it from a digital perspective, because any stadium's only going to have 40, I think 90,000 is the biggest stadium you're going to get. So taking whatever property that you're actually investing in and then thinking globally about how you activate, I think is super, super critical. And you are seeing a lot of things now, especially probably I would say the NBA is a good example of brands that are coming in and using mixed reality and VR to actually take that experience that you have in Stadia and then have that at home. But I think it's a massive missed opportunity for brands that put so much investment into the actual experience on site, but that's like already a captive audience. So thinking about those fans that can't be there and how you turn that into an experience that almost feels like that they are there is really how you'll get that return on investment when you start to think about your sponsorship investments.
Yeah, I think I can give you a really quick example how at Ascot Racecourse during COVID, when nobody could come to the racecourse, and we were thinking of ways on how to engage the sponsors and how to make, because they were still running races just behind closed doors. So what we did was we just repurposed our ticket. We sent everybody that was going to be there originally a ticket to their wallet. And then in conjunction with the sponsor, every day, while they were in front of the screen, some of those tickets would change colour in real time. And if you were a winner, you were a winner. You could come back to the racecourse. And it was a really easy way of utilising an existing asset. And then the Ascot Golden Ticket, during that first week of trying it, brought in something like 50,000 new members and then became what was eventually the evolution of their fan pass. So it's actually taking some of your existing technologies and thinking about how you can repurpose them. But then jumping back to the point about the people behind the tech. Unfortunately, there's not as many engineers that are female in the industry yet as there could be, right?
Yes, there isn't, especially in electronics, it's about less than 4% when we talk about electronics and computer engineering. The data is very important. What generates the data is actually more important than actual data, because if you don't have a robust system that giving you the correct data and what you're trying to capture, it doesn't matter how much data you've got. If it's rubbish data, it's rubbish data. If it's good data, it's the system behind it. But even the system behind it, how to capture what you really need, what we are seeing when we talk to Formula One teams or even Premier Leagues, they don't have somebody understand the importance of the data governing and actually how that is work in terms of AI and machine learning, and how can they learn from previous exposure or previous event to actually generate more money or more sponsor, or how to engage the fans, or how can they get in touch with different even fan base. And I think one of the things which I was fascinated in Saudi, you've got 60%, most of the people, I think, is it 60 or 40% less than the age of 30? It's 60. It's quite significant. So that generation actually understand mobile phones. And I worked on smartphones and actually developing CPUs for them. So they understand mobile phones, they understand looking at the data. So data for them, it's a way and the stats. So if fans aren't there, they are really, really looking at the stats, who is their favorite athletes, what they are doing, what their performance in that game, and how that is looked in. But if the data is not correct, it doesn't actually give you the right aspect or the right engagement. So you need to engage the right platform and the right hardware to actually give you that kind of base, but as well, how can we utilize that base to have a real-time kind of data, so there is no delays in terms of the answering as well, and the capability to answer.
So, but alongside that then, in terms of the majority of software that's delivered is still being delivered by one demographic, right? It's how do you get more, because I think you need to get more women engaged at a very young age, because the technology, if a technology is delivered by a man, it's going to be delivered with a man in mind. Right. So how do you encourage women into that? Because technology is going to have a huge impact on reshaping sport. It already is. But you need to make sure that as women are starting to progress towards equality in many areas, that they don't get left behind again because the technology is not keeping up, because it's still focused just on what men want.
Yeah, I think more dangerously actually the AI, because I was one of the people who actually looked into certain algorithm for autonomous cars. And autonomous cars now, most of the designs and the software is being used and designed by men. So if it has a choice to kill a male or a female, actually it will kill the male all the time. So ladies, we are safe. And I think one of the things which works for our advantage, but it doesn't work for the advantage for the male in this case. So what we really need, we need both of the parties to be involved in the design and actually creating these algorithms, because you need both genders to actually give their right correction of choices during that selections, because in most of the cases, the mother taking care of the children, so protect the mother. But in certain cases, what about the father, if he's the one who is taking care of the children? Or certain aspect is he is the main, not just taking care of his family, maybe other families as well. So in that case, you want to protect that. So you need both of the kind of gender to be part of the decision, which is right now, most of the decision, especially on the algorithm side, is done by male, not by female. And I think we need both gender, especially around the algorithm and the software to have an equal.
So how do you all think you deal with that? Because we can throw loads of answers around. We're moving towards the idea of equality in sport for women, okay? But you could be hampered by inequality in the technology that's helping push sport along.
Well, I would say start very, very young. Girls need to be involved with the STEM, science, technology, math, engineering at very young age. And don't leave it too late when they are 18 and 19, telling them, oh, they need to do a STEM degree. By that time, they are not in a STEM. They pick their, in the UK, they pick their choices for GCSE at age of 13. So from the age of 13, before they pick, they are going towards the art subjects or the STEM subjects, they need to be able to see the opportunities in sports. They need to see that part is very attractive. Sports has been always attractive for both male and female. So I think it's an opportunity to get more girls into STEM, especially the opportunity we have right now in a sport. And the more community we have in engineering support, we're going to have more female sports kind of an athlete achieving, because you've got the support behind you, you've got the team behind you as well.
You know, again, at Guild, in terms of esports and gaming, we were very much focused on trying to have an organisation that was 50% female, both office and players, which is very, very challenging. And Saudi's definitely leading the way when it comes to female gamers. But a good example was with EAFC. So we've talked a lot about football here and how big it is in the UK and in the Kingdom, but it's 90% played by men, 10% by women. It's very hard to find professional EAFC female players. And again, when you look at the game and how it's designed, people will just say women don't play EAFC, but the game is designed by men. So I think that's why, as an org, we're very much trying to focus on actually talking about equality and the challenges that you do have within the industry, because you can't just say that women don't play it when it's a game that's not created for them.
Just to speak to, I think, the advancements that Saudi is currently making in the space. So you have companies like the Saudi company for AI. They've just launched an AI competition where there are quite a few females involved in the organization of it. Even within Sky, I walk around in their offices on a regular basis, and they have a lot of females in there. And to the point as well, SUSIF, which is the Saudi University Sports Federation, is equivalent of the NCAA here, but in Saudi. They are running a lot of programs and we're alongside SURJ as well, we're helping develop programs on the technology side to help them engage and then be able to put their students into internships with other entities within the sports-related entities within the kingdom to be able to help develop that. And then also on our end, we're investing in sports technology companies and making sure that across the ecosystem, across all the stakeholders, we're creating relationships with those companies to help, again, train and develop young engineers or product managers, because it's not just about the engineers, it's about everyone in the ecosystem who helps bring to life that technology, whether it's fan engagement, officiating, etc. So there is quite a bit going on in Saudi, but of course, the more support, the better.
I agree with the challenges and the opportunity to get more females involved in the design of these applications of technology and AI, and they're still catching up to do. That said, I think the big opportunity and what we're already seeing is the actual use of tech and AI has already started to really benefit female athletes in a way that I think was hampered by sports' traditional male bias. So if you look at sports coaching over the years, professional sports coaching towards females was still heavily dominated by male, and a lot of the coaching techniques were viewed as taking what the males did and reducing the load for the females, and that was a very basic and frankly suboptimal, as technology and AI has now shown, a suboptimal approach on how to work optimally with female athletes. And I think one example that's come up quite a lot recently is some of the applications for female athletes that manage also performance around the menstrual cycle, which I didn't think I'd be on a stage talking about that, but
you're the last person I thought would be saying that.
But it's a very it's a very real application of technology in a way that really allows females to perform at their best in a way that in the past was probably not recognized or managed in the right way. And so I think the opportunity to through technology to eliminate the gender bias that has been a challenge in sport historically is very much there.
Yeah, I'd agree with you. I was looking at, I mean, what is the single most immediate entry point into into technology for most people, it's a mobile phone. And yet, women still globally are 28% behind men in terms of ownership of those devices. So when you think about that entry point, it's quite a challenging, it's still quite challenging. So some of the stuff that's being done, say for instance in Saudi and some of the other countries, needs to be replicated because sport is global, right? It's great to have all of these advancements taking here, but it's a global platform that eventually we need to service. On that point about sport, obviously, Jasmine, I'll probably come to you first on this because you mentioned it previously about esports. So do you think esports has kind of shaken off this, I don't know, what, I've spoken to sportsmen that still don't see it as a sport, right? Yeah. Well, and I think arguably they're of a certain age and of a certain era, right? It is now a defined money-making career for so many people. Can you give us a little bit of, your view on where it sits now in terms of, can it stand side by side with sport?
Yeah. So obviously I had time in sport and then the music industry and then the opportunity to go into esports and gaming came up. And when I looked at the numbers, I think we're at 3.3 billion gamers now, which will be 5 billion by 2030. So we're probably my generation, you're a gamer or not, everyone is a gamer. And I think without doubt the kingdom is leading the way. So with the addition of the Esports World Cup and the Esports Olympics, we now have events that are a pinnacle of a sport. So if you did grow up with traditional sport, those two things were so important to you because you had something that you could aspire to be. So this kingdom has given gamers now, I think, an event now that they can aspire to, which is the World Cup or the Olympics. I think for me, coming from traditional into esports and gaming, I think when you start to look at like sim racing, which I've touched on before, and how that can go into F1, I think the decision makers, which the parents can understand that. Like we heard in the first panel, if a parent came home and said, Mum, I want to be an F1 driver, they would probably say yes. If they're like, Mum, I want to play EAFC professionally, they probably wouldn't understand that or want that. But, I had two kids, and they were children that were Fortnite players, that by the time they were 18, they had won $2 million each, which is, insane. So I think, for me, it is definitely on its way. Obviously, definitely here in the kingdom, it is. But the challenges I think we need to overcome is, I think, adding something like chess, which has been added to the Esports World Cup, is a great addition because everyone understands chess. So adding those sports, I think, are just critical to getting, it's great for esports people to know and love esports, but what we need is to turn this into an entertainment vertical, and so something like chess does that. I think the other challenge that we probably have more in the UK than here is just the press will never write about it. So if you have a football journalist, they understand football. When you go into esports, the World Cup had 20 games. Now, for a journalist to understand 20 esports is slightly challenging. And so until, the Nordics is a good example of a country that often get main coverage in sport, and it's considered a main sport. So until I think in the UK we start to get that coverage, I think it's always going to be challenging. But, I think what they're doing here for esports and gaming is nothing short of exceptional, and they lead the way when it comes to women as well. It's very much, men and women together. We don't have it in the UK. It's still quite toxic. And you see a lot more professional gamers here than what you do in the UK. In the UK, we were lucky to get to 5%.
Does anybody else have any comments on esports?
Can I ask a question? So here, just on the esport, when you see females and males playing esport, do female actually come out and say, "Hi, my name is whatever, Layla, and I'm in esports"?
Yeah.
Yeah. And do they give actually their right identity? Like, do you have the percentage, how much male to females that are actually playing the sports?
So when it comes to gaming, 47% of gamers are female. When it comes to professional, in the UK, it's 5%, which is insane. I was with a very, very senior person of a major esports organization. She came to do a tour of Guild. And she couldn't believe how many females we had, and she said in her job it took her 9 months. She was chief operating officer to see one woman. So it's not just at a playing level, it's about an opportunity level that we all have to work on. But Yeah, I think it is about providing opportunity, and there's obviously a lot more opportunity when it comes to the kingdom. I think professional gamers are nearly at 20%, so they are definitely leading the way. It's just that the opportunities don't exist for women once you get to a certain point, but they do for men.
Esports is a fantastic example, and there's also, you have traditional sports and esports, and in the middle you have virtual sports as well that should be considered as it's a net new pathway that we're just starting to explore in the world of sports technology.
Are you talking around things like metaverse and VR and stuff like that?
To an extent. Again, it's a broad spectrum, I would say. For example, think of it like competing on your Peloton bike with other people and then virtually competing against other people globally. So rather than sitting on a console, but getting physically active within the virtual world. And so there's plenty of opportunity there. You're looking at the iPad generation of toddlers. Saudi, the majority of the population is actually digitally native. So you have to explore the opportunities across technology whereby, one, opportunities are socialized, two, the ability for the individual as well, mass participation considerations are in market, and then socializing that. I think marketplaces are very important, kind of the FOMO principle of understanding what your friends are doing and then being able to participate, and social media has helped with that. But I think now we're looking at the next level of social media where it's rather than just a lean back experience, it's a lean forward and participation-based experience. And to be frank, the industry is still nascent there. And so the kingdom has a very big opportunity. And again, something we're exploring across a lot of our partners is how do we take the traditional and the esports and find opportunities and pathways into both of those, but also into the virtual sports space as well.
Yeah, isn't that where the whole phygital term is coming to now, isn't it? Phygital is the kind of the new thing, right? Physical meets digital. Sorry, Donal.
I'll just add. I'll add to the original question of whether esports is a sport. I think now, given the stance of the IOC and the announcement that there will be a global esports Olympics, makes it very clear that the sports world sees it as a sport and an important sport to be part of the portfolio of sports to capture a young and diverse audience. So very much from a sports perspective, or sports organization perspective, is a sport. From a gamer's perspective, I don't think it matters so much whether they're considered a sport or a game. But we will see, I think, more involvement of governments now in esports, now that it is a more recognized sport and will get funding from national governments and national Olympic committees. But of course, Saudi's got ahead of that game and has already significantly funded esports in a way that no other country has done to date to that scale. And they will become inevitably the global hub for esports, and within that they've made it very clear that one of their objectives is to provide the equal opportunity for male and female gamers, and also for male and females across the entire value chain of esports, which is significant and in terms of business opportunities. So I think it's a very positive thing for the world of esports that it is being seen more as a sport and it is being democratized, and that Saudi's played such a pivotal role in getting the esports Olympics over the line and growing the sport globally.
Yeah, I mean, as somebody who has been enjoying gaming for over 40 years, it doesn't seem like it's something that should receive a pushback. I know the actual players are a much younger generation, but if you think about the fabric of esports and the history behind it, it started foundationally many decades ago. But you're absolutely right. I think the acceleration that Saudi has helped push it forward with is quite exciting. And just before we go off esports, I was going to ask, and I'm not sure whether that's what you were trying to touch on, Heba, and maybe Jasmine, you know a little bit about this, but do you think there are still barriers, or do women still struggle with harassment in esports? compared to other sports?
Yes. In the UK, we ran a campaign with Sky. I'm sure you're familiar with Sky, so it's called No Room for Abuse. 75% of females experience online abuse, and it's usually of sexual and violent nature. And 1 in 10 will have suicidal thoughts off the back of that. So I think since we launched that campaign, it got a lot of traction, but it was actually designed to target men because you need allyship when the numbers are that high. But by the very nature of gaming it's almost like social media, but you actually don't have to prove your identity. So people are probably worse behaved than ever. So that I think from the 75% we've gone to 63%. But again, it's, if you think of traditional sport, if girls were going to football and 75% of them were being abused, they wouldn't go back. So it's super challenging for the industry that we really align and build allies to stop this and also provide opportunities for women from a professional level to do this. But I do want to say in the kingdom, it is not like this. I really do believe gaming is somewhere where men, males and females actually can socialize together. In the UK, that is not the case.
Yeah. Sorry, did you want to say something quickly?
Yeah, I would like to say something. We really need to grow the community. For us to have more athletes, female athletes, they need the support from other women in the whole entire supply chain. So it's not just as an athlete, you need another athlete, you need the engineers, you need the managers, you need the marketing, you need the people around them to give them that support and to basically get them to where they need. I was astonished, most of the teams that we worked with is mainly all male, which is fine because in engineering, not many female go into engineering, but I think we really need to push these gender barriers, and it doesn't matter. And I would say definitely Saudi's leading the way in many aspects, and what I've seen, especially when I was in Jeddah, and how their athletes is being supported by other community, and I think we need to learn from them in certain aspects.
Okay, so I have no concept of time. I don't know where we are, but I'm going to ask another question anyway to try and wrap things up. If we kind of look ahead, do you have kind of any insight in what the sport landscape will look like in terms of technological impact over the next decade? Anybody want to kind of throw an answer out there for that?
I'll just keep touching on the gaming esports part. If you are traditional sport, I would definitely have a gaming strategy or esports, especially in this country. So, we've touched on the percentage of the population that's under 35 that they're digital natives, but in the UK there was a lot of work we were doing with traditional sport, and Man City, for example, have an esports org. PSG are another example. I know Al Nassr here, I've got a EFC player, but the one thing I would say is just by the nature of where traditional sport is, and if you think of anyone under 35, they are gamers. So one advice I would give is actually just really think about when you look at your digital strategy, how gaming and esports does come into that.
On our end at SURJ, I think taking a look at the future of sports means taking a look at personalization and the ability to address every single fan with their preferences and habits and have dynamic experiences that can address them. But at the same time, looking at the communal aspects that can be addressed, because we're looking at a society that's increasingly very in the phone or in their second screen experience and not looking up or engaging or socializing. So the marriage of those two is extremely important, because we also don't want to lose sight of the community that comes with sport, and technology will definitely be facilitating that in the near future, and everyone across the stage will definitely be a part of that.
I mean, I think the advice I would give to the sports organizations as they look forward next 5 to 10 years on technology, I think first of all is to have a clear strategy, very clear on what it is you want AI and tech to do for your organization and what outputs you want them to create, because frankly, unless it increases efficiency of output or the effectiveness of output. It's a vanity project, and we see a lot of those as well. So just being very clear on what it is you want to do. I think secondly, be clear on how you do it. A lot of sports businesses are relatively small in the grand scheme of things, and so I think they should be partnering with others who are already working in this space. And there may be some sports organizations that need to develop in-house solutions, but I think significantly more should be partnering. And again, I think what SURJ is doing in the landscape as it looks at digital and the partnerships globally that can come into Saudi, I think that can really help with the growth for the organizations here, because getting the right partners is critical. And then lastly, just having a very clearly defined implementation roadmap with the right people and the right organizational structure to deliver it. So it's straightforward, I guess.
Perfect.
Thanks, mate. You've been plugging me more than I have.
Does anybody here have any questions for anybody on this panel?
Before I start, I just want to thank you all for being here. And my question is for Jasmine. How can you make sure that the esport in general is ethical? As we know that there's a lot of issues been going on. And how can we avoid that?
God, I think that's... Yeah, you know what? I think if I think about that, and this is where it is differ from traditional sport, is most sports will have a governing body or a federation, and I know there's a lot of work now to do that within esports, but I think what you have to find is federations coming together and having alignment on what we want to achieve with esports globally. So I know there is a global federation, but I probably would, from my observation, say that would be quite inconsistent with each country. Depending on, I know in the UK, British Esports Federation's a private entity, but other countries it's a government entity. I think for me that would probably be the biggest thing. I think there's a lot of work there to do just to stop that online bullying, to support women. But we don't have, a FIFA like football does, but we're definitely on the way to creating that. But I think if you look at, I've said esports has been around for a couple of decades compared to traditional sports, which have been around for hundreds of years. So I'd say for me, that's probably the biggest thing, is getting that governing body where we get consistency across all the countries.
From my perspective, I run a membership organisation. So I look at this and I think esports and fan engagement and stadia, and you're talking huge volume. And to your point around strategy, absolutely, that's needed. So I'm sat here wrestling as a CEO of a small organisation, less than 10 staff, thinking about how we apply a strategic approach to digitalisation in terms of member engagement and ensuring, at the moment our members are incredibly engaged. Our click-through rates on newsletters and socials are very, very high compared to some industry standards, which is great. But how do we get even better at that? And how do we utilise AI, notwithstanding the fact that a lot of the information on the internet, as an example, has been produced by men, and it has biases built within it. And so there's this surge of, let's run something through chat and let's see what happens. And obviously that interpretation, like how is a small organisation trying to create efficiencies, be more effective and engaging, where do I start? And I appreciate that's a big question, but I'm genuinely very interested in the answer.
May I ask, most of your members, are they male or female?
So about 18% are male, the rest are female.
Use a lot of colors. Yeah, I think definitely you would need certain algorithm to be generated by females and algorithms, but that is really depends. So we've seen lately, even when there is certain gaming to attract female, they are using different background, different clothing, different even pigmentation, because females typically sees colors more than male. So females don't get colorblind, male will get colorblind. We carry the gene, but we actually don't have the gene we don't have the actual kind of perception, but as well the way we see colors is different than male. So definitely use colors. But then on the algorithm, how to attract them, it will be the language as well. So certain languages need to be used differently from one to another. So whoever writing the feeds or the Instagram or the LinkedIn messages, it needs to kind of word it in a different ways to attract a different gender. So if you're trying to focus on more male, I think using certain language and certain numbers. So typically females, the numbers will be the end. Males, I would put it in the top. So in terms of percentage, there is female has to have an emotion more into it rather than stats. Male will have different aspects. So there are different tricks which is you can use, even how to track different parts. But as you said, strategic approach to it, it's would be advisable, basically.
Thank you very much for the nice session. Maybe you will find my participation a little bit strange. My question, why I need equally in the function or employee sector? From my background as athlete or trainer, I'm looking for the good environment for me as athlete or a trainer or organizer. Doesn't matter it's a female or a male. I'm looking for the quality of the job or quality of the function. Why are we looking to have equal in technology or the people behind the stage? We always looking for the quality, doesn't matter female or male.
In principle, 100% agree with you. In actuality, and we're talking in terms of tech, the history of technology has predominantly been male. And the way AI algorithms work is they work based on the data that is provided to that algorithm in order to output whatever functionality it has. Now, I'll give you an example, a stereotypical example. When women typically write emails, we tend to put exclamation points or emojis, or we tend to soften our language in the emails because over the history of time, it's been seen that women can be more aggressive if they're direct or if they don't soften their language, versus for males, historically, it's been very transactional. But when a woman writes a transactional email, sometimes it can come across as combative or aggressive or what have you. And that's just the way society's worked, unfortunately. So when it comes to the algorithms, it's the same principle. When you're feeding the algorithms with data that is delivered in a certain way, it's also about who receives it at the end of the day and how the algorithm reads it. So if males are consistently contributing, it's going to be transactional, and therefore the outputs are going to be geared towards the male audience. So when you put in more female or softer language, or more, in the case, emotionally oriented, instinctual attributions to that data, it'll come out more relevant to women. So in principle, when it comes to where we play and how technology influences and why we need men and women, it's to make sure that we have the best of both worlds, rather than just having one-sided inputs into, and this can be applied to everything, not just the AI algorithms, but it's about making sure that we have all perspectives at play, rather than just the majority of what has historically been available to everybody.
Thank you for being a really engaging audience, and thank you to the panel. It was really interesting. Thank you.